Let's have a look at some complex numbers here, some imaginary numbers problems here. Here's a first problem where we're going to have a square root of a negative number. Now, if we want to solve for x here, what we need to understand is that when we take the square root of both sides, the square root of x squared is going to come out nicely as x. On this side, when we take the square root in these quadratic equations, we have to take both the plus and minus version of that square root, because a minus number times itself will give you a positive number under here, and a positive number times itself will give you the positive number under here. Well, now the things are different because we have a negative number in here. So this is like the square root of -1 times 9. I'm breaking that up for a reason, because I know with my imaginary numbers now that the square root of -1 is I, this new definition of an imaginary number. So we're going to use this. So what happens now is x comes out from under the radical on the left. I have plus or minus a couple things here, and I'm just going to reverse the order. That's square root of 9. This is square root of -1. Okay, I've just reversed the order here. And now really we know that that is a 3. 3 comes out from under the 9, and square root of -1 is I. So there's my answer right there. It's actually going to be plus 3i minus 3i. There are my two solutions for x in this equation here. It's really that simple, but you have to look to break up this -9 into a -1 and a 9. So this comes out as a 3, this becomes I, and there are your two answers. Don't forget to take plus or minus when you take the square root in an equation. Okay, another example would look like this. Okay, 4x squared equals -64. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 4, get me a -16. And now when I take the square root of both sides here, okay, I have to take that plus or minus once again. So I get the square root of -16. But I'm going to break this up, and I'm going to make this equal to the square root of 16 times the square root of -1. And now once again, I can see that x here comes out from this. This is going to be plus or minus square root of 16 is 4, and that is just I. So I'm going to get x equals, and it depends on how you want to write it, plus 4i. X also equals a minus 4i. So every time we're doing this, we notice we're getting two solutions, because in quadratic equations we often get two solutions. Previously you learned how to factor, and factoring often gives us two solutions, but up here we had two solutions, 1, 2, plus 3i minus 3i. Down here now I'm getting two solutions, plus 4i minus 4i. That's pretty typical. It's not all the time, but it's very often. Okay, third example, let's look at this one here. X minus 1 quantity squared equals -36. So again, I have to take the square root of both sides to solve this. And so x minus 1 quantity squared is going to come out as just x minus 1. Okay, and when I take the square root, once again, don't forget plus or minus square root. When I get -36, it's the same thing with just an extra step here. Okay, so this is going to be plus or minus. I'm just going to separate the 36 and the -1. Okay, hopefully you see that from our knowledge of working with radicals. And clearly I still have x minus 1 on the left. Square root of 36 is 6, so I get a plus or minus 6. Square root of -1 is I, so I'm going to get plus or minus 6i. But I'm not done yet. Okay, I've still got this -1 over here that I have to deal with. So now I'm going to add 1 to each side. So I'm going to go 1 plus or minus 6i. Okay, I added 1 to each side. So if I add 1 here, I got to add 1 over here. Okay, these cancel. I'm just left with x. And I moved the 1 out front, but that's okay. I still have the 6i. So my two answers here are x equals 1 plus 6i and x equals 1 minus 6i, because of the plus or minus. There's my two answers for that one. So for the first time, we actually have what's called a complex number. Complex number consists of the real portion, that would be the 1. Okay, this is the real number, this is the imaginary number. Complex number has both components. Okay, if you just had 6i or 4i like we had up here, these are called a pure imaginary number. Okay, but when you have a real number, that's again a pure imaginary number because you only have an I, you don't have a real number in there. Okay, but down here, when you have a real number in combination, when you add it with an imaginary number, you now have what's called a complex number. Okay, and hence the name of this chapter. A complex number consists of a real number plus an imaginary number. There's some examples for you.